once, my ass.
I'm on my floor. Bonjour, Monsieur Pussycat.
Cracking toast, Robert.
Start spreading the news.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the short podcast about short films. I am your host, and we are discussing the Academy Award for Best Animated Short. Today's episode is about the 35th year of the award at the 39th Academy Awards, which celebrates the films of 1966. Today's guest last appeared on the show talking about The Two Musketeers and the nominees of 1951. Please welcome Zara Wood. Hello, Zara.
Hi.
Welcome back.
It's always so formal. Like you've got this like great structure going on, and then I come in being like, "Hi."
Well, that's the whole thing. It's just like that's how each thing goes. It's like I have this big introduction for each short, and then we descend into unfiltered thoughts and interpretations and all that.
It's so formal too. You've got like my whole name, like I'm important.
You are important. You're my friend. You are very important to me.
Thank you, but like I mean, like I'm a professional.
You are a professional.
It's true. I have professional dumbass in one of my Instagram bios.
Mm-hmm. And it's like you're a great artist and you're a writer and like you do a lot of things that are really good. Great fan cam editor. You're an organizer with your whole alliance that you've got going on. It's just like you're a multi-hyphenate.
Please. Okay, we gotta keep going on. I can't take this.
Okay, but before we get into the shorts, remind us, what is your familiarity with the best animated short category?
Not very extensive. I really haven't seen much. I did obviously watch today's shorts.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I'm not very familiar with a lot of the shorts. Not intentionally so. It's just one of those things that I feel like in general, like not just myself, but a lot of people just don't give a lot of thought to. They just, it's always the focus with the Oscars is like on the big main categories.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everyone watches Best Picture, everyone watches like, Best Actor and Actress, like all that kind of stuff. And then the little ones and the tech ones kind of just get overlooked a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And the shorts, like same with live action. Like I don't think I've probably watched really many films nominated for best live action short, so it's like the
Yeah.
same thing. It's just kind of like overlooked, but not intentionally so. It's just I just don't think about it. I should, but I don't.
Mm-hmm. If anything, like live action short is less seen and less talked about than animated short, because at least with animated short nowadays, you still get stuff from Disney and Pixar. They keep submitting things, but then when it comes to live action short, there's no real major players in that category, outside of like
Yeah.
maybe Netflix will like pick up a short and
Yeah,
distribute it or
live
something.
action short is like seems to be like I said, I'm not an expert, but like when I graze the nominees, like when I look at lists and stuff whenever they come out, it always seems to be more like independent, smaller creators, like that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, small enough to get nominated for an Oscar, like
Yeah,
not indie, like they're not up on YouTube,
yeah.
sometimes, but um, but yeah, no, with animation too, I think also a lot of these shorts end up in some way, and even just a really small way, living on in the public consciousness and culture
Mm-hmm.
because of like the animation community and like all the animation aficionados and historians and stuff like that who will go back to these and like bring them up for different reasons. I mean, like even what you're doing with the podcast, you're highlighting every year of
Mm-hmm.
like this category, and that's a way like highlighting history. So
Exactly.
yeah.
You get my mission statement. Yeah.
I'm so observant.
Okay. Let's get into these nominees now. This year has only three. Our first nominee and the year's winner is a Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass double feature, directed by John Hubley. This is the third nomination and third win for John Hubley, as well as the second nomination and second win for his wife and collaborator, Faith Hubley. The two of them are so far undefeated in this category, which I wish I could say was unprecedented, but Walt Disney won 10 Oscars in this category before even losing once. But still, it's nice to see the Hubley succeed. Now, unlike their previous nominees, Moonbird and The Hole, this is not an improvised short about the innocence of youth or nuclear war. Instead, we get essentially a music video for two songs by Herb Alpert and Tijuana Brass, Spanish Flea and Tijuana Taxi. I can't find much info about how the short came to be, whether the Hubleys approached Alpert or Alpert approached them, but whichever happened, this is the short we got from it. In the first segment, Spanish Flea, we see a flea trying to stop a hotel or resort from destroying the farm it lives on, and in the second, Tijuana Taxi, we see Taxi rampage through a city, which I can only assume is Tijuana, with its patrons trying to catch a flight. Zara, what did you think of a Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass double feature?
Yeah, I thought it was really cute and fun. Like it's very like simplistic and not so much in like its animation, but just its story. I mean, it's a music video. It doesn't really have to, I think, bring a lot to the table, but I think the animation makes up for what it lacks in that kind of engagement because it's fun, it's bouncy, it feels very like loose and storyboard-esque, which and has like that rough charm like
Mhm,
this is not they're not stylistically the same at all, but the first thing that comes to mind is like that period in like the 60s and like 70s, like Sword in the Stone kind of thing, like
mhm,
what Disney was doing, like you could tell the animation was a bit rougher, you could see like the line work more.
yeah.
Like that's the first kind of sort of thing that I think of. Like obviously these shots are not stylistically the same at all, but that kind of like
Mhm.
roughness, like you could sort of see the actual like work on the
Yeah, like you can see the
on the frame.
brushstrokes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I really like that. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, it's just like I when looking through like reviews of this, I see a lot of people complaining about the animation style, how rough
Yeah.
it is. It's just like it, and you pointed out like a
Yeah.
lot of people are saying it's like, oh, a child could do this. So it's like, why don't you try and see
No,
you?
for real. Like
But
it's so funny. I'm completely someone who is like, you don't have to be able to do something to criticize it. Obviously, I mean, a lot of us aren't politicians, right? Like. But But it's like with animation and stuff like that, it does get under my skin a little sometimes. And anything art related, I think when I see people like criticizing and being like, "Oh, I could do that." It's like the same thing with when you see like, abstract art, you see people
Mhm,
criticize that and they're like, "Oh, well, like say, it's a canvas." And I think we've all had those thoughts. Like I've had those thoughts with abstract art, where it's like you'll see a canvas and somebody's just like done just a blob of paint on it. And they'll be like, oh, well, I could do that. And it's like, yeah, maybe you could, but would you? Would you put in the effort? Would you put in the thought to make
mhm.
it art? And like, no, most people wouldn't. Like, and that's like what gets me about it. It's like, you're right to criticize it, but don't demean the work, especially when people, there was one review where they're like a 13-year-old child could have done this. It's like, oh, they could have. They're like a child prodigy, Like, um, like, can you do that? Like, I certainly couldn't. I made an animatic like 2 years ago, and the whole thing was mainly just solely like moving the mouth, and that took me like 2 days. Like, it is
Mhm.
not easy work. So acting like a
Yeah,
child could do that is just
yeah,
incredibly demeaning and just wrong, like factually.
yeah. And I know which review you're talking about because that was written by frequent guest of the podcast, Christoph. He is listening to this episode right now.
I'm so sorry.
Don't be
You're
sorry.
wrong, but like I'll be nicer. Like you're like a friend-in-law to me.
But yeah, it's but yeah, it animate a lot of people like animation is one of those things that's deceptively hard to do. It's like because you see it's just like, oh, you just gotta draw a picture like 500 times. It's just
Yeah.
like and but it's like there's so much it there's so much thought that has to go into it, like about how like each character moves, and it's just like,
Oh,
and with
exactly.
something like this, there's a lot about how it plays with the music and all that, and
Yeah,
just like,
timing is so essential.
and this short I think really does excel about like making a marriage of the visuals and the music. I think, and it's like star of the show is the music, and these two songs here are some like really like recognizable famous songs that you hear
Yeah, that
just like,
first one was like I've heard that a million times before and things.
yeah, it's like
God.
these are songs that often pop up just randomly everywhere. I wonder if there might be like they're easy to get the rights to just put in things, but it's like they show up everywhere. But still, it's just like this, even with that over familiarity with this music, it's like this just feels like the music just goes really really well with it. Yeah, because really the music came first and you put the animation over it. That makes it a lot better than filming something first and then just slapping some music on top of it. But yeah,
Yeah. It's
and
like it's funny too when you're being like, it's people take it as like drawing the same thing like 500 times or something like that. I could probably vouch and say that I have probably drawn the same thing 500 times and it never fucking looks the same. It doesn't look the same ever.
hmm
So like there is a talent in consistency.
hmm
And that's something that animators need. And especially too, you think about how much harder it is to kind of maintain that stylistic consistency in something that is so intentionally loose and rough. You know what I mean? Like
hmm
it is like really like interesting that they maintained like the basically character models all that kind of stuff like throughout the thing
hmm
while still being so bouncy and free flowing which I think and because it's so simple in its design and look it's like really easy to be like oh well that's not that hard you know what I mean just like as an outsider it's like oh that would have been easy to draw it's just a few scribbles it's
hmm
like no not really because a few scribbles doesn't look the same when you draw it 500 times.
yeah.
So making it look the same, that's hard.
So yeah, and it's just like we're this short isn't like something that's gonna, it's not particularly deep or anything. It's not
Yeah, no.
trying to be a big message thing, but it's really fun. It's just
Yeah.
it's only 5 minutes too, so it's just like it does everything it needs to do, and it does it really well. It's just
Yeah,
a
exactly.
lot of fun, and it
It serves its purpose.
and it's kind of funny how like so you don't know much about the Hubblies, do you? Right?
No, I don't. I'm
Yeah,
sure they're very interesting though.
yeah, they're some of my favorite animators. And it's just like it is so funny, just like comparing it to like their previous short films, especially like in this category at least. It's like those first two that were nominated, which both also won, and just like they are these very kind of experimental kind of things that play with like the like improvise it's like the first one, Moonbird, they just kind of record their two children like playing around and then animated over that, like animated the world that they were imagining. And it's just like it does some interesting things like in terms it's it has some deep things going on. And the second one is like two people pondering like nuclear war and all that, like at the height of the Cold War and stuff. And it's like these really deep, intricate things with political messaging. And it's just like, and then you get this, which is just a fun little short where it's just like they put some animation over Spanish Flea in Tijuana Taxi. And it's just a very this short really does stand out in terms of their whole career because it feels a bit more corporate than most of their other works, but still, when you have the Hubblies touching it, it turns into gold.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense about like when because I haven't seen those other works, so
Of
I
course.
can't like speak in my head like and properly compare them. But from what you're saying, like yeah, I can kind of get the corporate vibe because to me, like I know you mentioned that you don't know the history of how it came to fruition. There's a lot of information about it, but watching it, it does seem like as it's a music video, like it was a commissioned work.
Mhm.
Like that the two Warner Brothers like they went and were
Herb
like.
Alpert and the Tijuana Brass.
Yeah, those guys. I'm sorry, I couldn't remember the first part. But it does seem
Tijuana
like they,
Brass. Keep going. Keep going with what you're saying.
yeah. Um, but it does seem like, yeah, they probably approached them, having seen their work, and was like, "Hey, can you do this for us?" Like, and and as you said, it's kind of like the first animated music video in a sense.
Hmm.
So it probably is like, I would say alongside just being like, first of a thing, probably would have set kind of a precedence maybe to be able to like approach or make works like based on artists' music and stuff like that at that
Hmm.
time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of like, you look at it like that, and then you look at now, like we probably wouldn't have the gorillas without them. So, yeah, but you know what I mean? Like there's that through line that
But
would
yeah,
have to exist.
yeah,
Like a president needed to start somewhere. So,
yeah, this is often cited as like maybe not the first music video, but an early music video. Like from the road to like from Fantasia up to I guess like Video Killed the Radio Star or something. This sits like right in the middle. Oh, and so which is two weird things to compare, but it works. It works
no,
as a
I
thing.
get it.
Like
I
in
get the
the
thought.
but yeah, and it does make sense that they were commissioned because they did the Hubleys did often like animate some commercials and stuff to keep their
Hmm.
studio running. It's like because
Yeah.
they are just independent animators who don't have studio backing or anything, so they need to make some money
Yeah.
some way.
I
And
think what's really interesting, sorry to interrupt,
go
about
ahead.
like if there was like a commission work too, I think the more interesting thing would be how it got on the Oscars list then, if it was a commission work. Because it's like I don't think I don't know, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like I don't think their commercials would probably be getting nominated. You know what I mean?
Oh
So
yeah,
like it falls into kind of a gray area, sort of.
yeah, it's just the submissions for these categories have always been weird, but I guess like this is a short film that happens to be like commissioned by the band or whatever. That hey, can you make this thing using our songs? And we'll be like, sure. And it's like pay us and we'll do it. And then they paid them and they did it. And then it's just like, hey, we made this thing, and they are like at this point they are regulars in terms of the Oscars, like, and so it's just like we might as well just make this our submission this year. And so they threw it in, and then it got nominated and won, and for the third time in a row. And I didn't mention this, but I feel like I should have mentioned this. But Faith Hubley has now her second nomination and her second win, and is still the first and only woman to be nominated in this category so far, which is
For real?
good for her. But also, it's like this is 1966. Let's get some more women in here, please.
No, oh my God.
Yeah, and it's just like the thing is because like for the first nearly 30 years of the category, the nominees were pretty much just five different men. Well, not totally, but at least the winners was five different men. And then uh because of like Walt Disney and then the heads of Warner Brothers and MGM and all that, it's just like and it's only once the studios kind of stop focusing on like animation, the theatrical animation, is when we start getting more independent animators and things like that. I talk about this over and over again on this podcast over the past like 20 episodes because it's like something that's been coming up, and we've seen it come up across the horizon. Then we're in the middle of it, and now we are in the aftermath of the death of the theatrical animated short.
Um,
So yeah.
yeah, because it's like, yeah, the animated short, like alongside, just the rise in like animated TV that would eventually lead in like Saturday morning cartoons and all that
Hmm.
kind of stuff. The home would have had to have been the television because
Yeah,
it's not that they're not playing in theaters anymore.
exactly. Like, oh, the theatrical animated short died because of the rise of television, and when those animators were put out of the job, they moved to television. Like famously, like Hanna and Barbera, they were the people who made Tom and Jerry. But when MGM shut down their animation studio, they formed their own animation company and then started making shit like the Flintstones and things like that, and went from big names in theatrical animation to big names in television animation.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I'm just like quickly looking through like the nominees to try and figure out when the next woman was nominated. And the thing is, a lot of these names are like French and stuff, and I can't really tell if these are like women's names or not. But I don't think most of these are women. Uh,
I guess you'll have to do like fact checking when you do research for like the next lot or whatever.
I
When you
think,
do the periodic.
yeah, I think the next woman who is nominated outside of Faith Hubley, who gets quite a few nominations, uh, is Suzanne Baker in 1976, who wins, and also in the same year we have Caroline Leaf, who we've talked about before because she is a historic animator. She was a colleague of Eli Noyes, who was a previous nominee, and she helped develop the art of sand animation, and so yeah, that's a whole
Awesome.
thing. But yeah, she
Cool.
ends up nominated later on. So yeah, we it will be 10 years after this point before we get a second and third woman nominated in this category. Fun. Misogyny.
God.
And I think that's a good place to move on.
Yeah, let's keep the ball rolling.
To our second nominee, which is The Drag, directed by Carlos Marchiori. This is the first nomination for Wolf Koenig and Robert Verrill, both of whom work for National Film Board of Canada, which is receiving its fourth nomination in total. Koenig and Verrill are NFB regulars, and you can find them all around different productions at NFB in many different roles. Both men even worked on previous nominee Romance of Transportation in Canada, with Koenig as a character designer while Verrill was an animator. As for the director, Carlos Marchiori, who seems to go by Carlo Marchiori nowadays, he was born in Italy and studied art, moving to Canada at age 18, which from what I can tell must have been around 1955, and eventually found himself working as an illustrator and animator for CBC and the NFB. Thus, working his way up, he ends up as a director on this short. After this point, Marchiori left the animation business and moved to California, where to this day he lives as a celebrated painter and muralist. I'm really liking how we are having more people who are still alive to talk about on this podcast. Anyway, as for The Drag, it's an anti-smoking PSA made for the Department of National Health and Welfare, presenting a lighthearted look at one man's history with his cigarette addiction and his quest to kick the habit. First, I want to say that this is absolutely beautiful. Like this, I love the style of the short. Like it has that kind of like magazine cutout kind of look, especially with, like the backgrounds and stuff, of where it's so 60s is what it is. It's just so very much a 60s film. And it's so stylistically cool. And of course the humor, the kind of dark humor, I guess, because it's focusing about like cigarette addiction. Uh it's really funny, even though it's a very serious topic. Like there's a point where the man like just suddenly finds out that lung cancer exists and wants to kick the habit. And that's a much funnier scene than it really should be. But yeah, I really like this short. It's a lot of fun, despite it being an anti-smoking PSA. And I can really see why this ended up nominated. I think this is like the first like PSA kind of thing to be nominated, unless you count all of NFB's things as kind of publicly funded advertisements or whatever. I don't know. I really like this. How about you, Zara?
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed this short. I thought, yeah, like you said, I agree. I think it's like collage multimedia look is really personally appealing. I really like collage work, magazine cutout, all this sort of stuff. Like even the different mediums that were on display and like the drawn aspects, like you can tell like it looks like they use paint or like watercolors in some of them, like that one part in the tub, like that was stood out
Hmm.
to me. It looked like it was like thin paint on something, like
Yeah,
probably glass. Yeah, they would probably use glass maybe.
maybe.
Um um that's just like a guess. I'm not an expert at being able to tell what techniques were used. But like just like me like from my different pockets of scattered knowledge from different areas, just like
Yeah,
throwing a
it's
guess out
okay.
there.
Just take stab at things. It's like
Yeah.
this isn't a graded assignment.
Um, but yeah, so yeah, I thought it was like really cool and yeah, it was fun, but like I think it at least personally for me, I think it really failed as a PSA. It's like if you made Smokey look so fun and cool, like I'm sorry, like
Yeah,
and I don't smoke, but I'm like, if I saw that back in the day, I don't know, maybe I'd be convinced. I'd be like, it's kind of slay, kind of serving.
Yeah, that's always the problem with like a lot of old media. Like I end up watching a lot of like old Hollywood movies, and they always make smoking look so glamorous. And it's just like I do not want to smoke. I don't enjoy the idea of inhaling toxic chemicals into my lungs. Like even with like safer stuff like weed and stuff. It's like I
Yeah.
don't want to take part of it if it's like smoking. I'll do edibles if they're offered to me, but it's just like I don't want to smoke. But it's just like the way
Guys, do you hear that everybody, if you're on the podcast, offer edibles, like at the Twitter and like set up a deal. You've got a customer.
my DMs are open.
They're completely open. Mine
Anyway,
aren't though. You cannot contact me. No.
anyway, but yeah, it's just like when you see Marlena Dietrich like puffing on a cigarette, it's just like, damn, she looks so cool. I want to buy a pack right now. It's just like, but I won't because I don't like it.
That's
But in a
that's
brief
so
moment, it's
real.
just like, damn. And
Yeah,
like
it's
here
like
too, and it's like the bath scene that you're talking about, where it's just like the person is submerged, and they have like the long little cigarette holder, and it just takes it out and puffs it out of the water and puts it back in like a snorkel. It's
yeah,
just like that. That's a really good bit.
it is. It's really funny, like the presentation and stuff like that. And that's why it's like almost makes it like you said, ineffective because it's just so fun and lively. And it's like that I feel like you're like not making it depressing enough. Like this guy does not look sad enough. Like you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Oh,
It's like it's so funny too because like I was literally in the city yesterday and the amount of fucking secondhand smoke I got in my face, I was like seething. It was so gross. But then I'll watch something like this and I'll be like, damn, smoking kind of cool.
mhm. Yeah.
It's like
And it's just like
great work, not a great piece.
although I also really like the ending where it's just like, so the whole like uh storytelling device is that the guy is at like a therapist who wants to try help him stop smoking, and at the end we find out that the therapist himself is like smoking, and it's like while offering him advice as to how to quit. And it's just like, and he runs home, and then he's just like uh then he's just like, one more cigarette can't hurt, but little does he know that there's like the gas to his stove is on or whatever, and so he lights it, he explodes, and then he's just left in his uh, ash-filled apartment, just sad. And just like it does have like a sad ending, although it is still like maybe its effectiveness as like an anti-smoking PSA isn't that good. But we're not here to judge it on its effectiveness as a PSA. We're just here to say if it's fun, if is it good, is it a a good piece of animation.
Yeah. I do think though, as like even though it is like designed as a PSA, it's still technically like a story about addiction. So I do think it's kind of interesting um at like the end when it's like the therapist is revealed to also be smoking kind of a hypocrite. It's like interesting in that sort of way and generally like what we as like modern viewers know and understand about addiction. Like because we know that like addiction recovery isn't a linear progress. Like you're gonna have setbacks. Like you
Hmm.
can't. It's like honestly not advised very much to like quit like cold turkey anyway, because
Yeah.
like you're more likely to just go straight back and like regress in your progress, like regress like
Yeah,
quotation marks
you got to like
again.
wean
Progress isn't
yourself
linear.
off.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's why we have like say nicotine patches, all that kind of stuff. Um, so I do think it's like it like obviously that's not the point because like the point is it's just a funny gag like haha the guy who's given advice can't even take his own advice, you know what I mean? Like he's
Hmm.
surrounded by cigarettes. It's a cautionary PSA. But I do think in that retrospect, just like as a time capsule, it's kind of interesting in that way.
Hmm.
Um
Yeah, like this
just
is
because like we
it
know
really
that's
is
not
like a
how it
60s
works.
thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's so of its era, like both aesthetically and in its
Messaging.
storytelling and function. Yeah,
Yeah. But yeah,
it's
it's
cool.
really dang good. Anything else
Yeah, it's
you like
good.
to say about this, or you want to move on?
I feel like I spotted Twiggy at one point in the background. That's all I want to say. It might not have been because I wasn't looking that hard, but a lot of models at the time were
I
looking like Twiggy. But in the cutouts, like in the background, I was like, one of them was like, "Is that Twiggy?" I don't know, might be, but
I saw the Beatles, I think, or maybe the Rolling
damn,
Stones. There's a group of four guys who like all in blue
I
with
didn't
those,
see
like
them.
with those haircuts. It's just like that they seem like the Beatles.
They probably were. Are you talking about the animated guys?
Like like in the montage where he's like really
Oh,
like seeing
okay.
all the like people. There's like a group of like four guys who are all smoking and they have
Oh
matching
yeah, yeah, yeah.
haircuts and blue outfits, and it's just
Oh
like
yeah.
those seem like the Beatles. I think that's
Yeah,
a
no, I
Beatles
saw those
reference.
guys. They're absolutely the Beatles. All the like, yeah, they're definitely the Beatles. They even
Mhm.
look like the shitty cartoon.
Yeah. Uh,
Why
but
did
yeah,
everyone decide like that the Beatles' uniform color was blue back in the day?
I don't know. I think it might have been due to like help, maybe like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, isn't the font on that blue or something?
Yeah,
Or-
they're like posed like in blue outfits and whatever.
Yeah, we solved it.
We did it.
We solved the mystery that no one was asking.
That the other people probably knew already. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not a Beatles fucking expert. I don't know
Yes,
shit.
you are. Don't deny it.
I'm really not. I don't know that.
But yeah, I think they just did have blue outfits. It's just we typically saw them in like black and white.
That's probably true. Yeah.
Anyway, we'll move on to our third and final nominee, which is The Pink Blueprint, directed by Holly Pratt, whom, after a long time of being merely a co-director for Freeling, finally gets to be the sole credited director of an Oscar-nominated short. This is the third and final nominations for both David H. DePatie and Friz Freeling. So we've come a long way with Friz. Longtime Looney Tunes animator, formed his own studio with a former president of Warner Brothers Animation, DePatie, after it closed down. What's next? Well, despite little Oscar success after this point, with multiple shorts being shortlisted but none being nominated, DePatie Freeling Enterprises kept chugging along and ended up becoming the last animation studio focused on theatrical animation, and eventually selling the studio to Marvel, becoming Marvel Productions. Freeling left the company at this point, going back to Warner Brothers and working on some new Looney Tunes animation there, while DePatie stayed with Marvel, and this new studio was behind many, many classic TV cartoons of the 80s, including Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, Muppet Babies, The Transformers, Gem and the Holograms, and My Little Pony and Friends, among others. And they also made The Grinch is the Cat in the Hat, which I just wanted to say out loud. Uh, Going back to the short, this is the second and final nominations for the Pink Panther and Little Man, previously winning for the Pink Fink. In this short, we see Little Man just trying to build a normal ass house. The Pink Panther, of course, hates the idea and wants something much more modern and pink. Thus, we are led into many construction related gags. Zara, what did you think of our final nominee?
Thought it was fine. Like it is very like technically like competent. Like it's very good in that respect. But just in general, like even as a kid, like I would see some of those like old like Pink Panther shorts, something like that. I've never really like gotten into the character or like the appeal of the Pink
Mhm.
Panther. I don't know, it's probably like, probably because I'm so young. But like um yeah, no, so I was just kind of watching. I was like, it's fine. It's kind of like that sort of similar reaction I get sometimes. So like, you'll see like all like I guess like Tom and Jerry stuff, like what we watched last time I was on, or like other some sort of older shots of the era. It's like it's so like in the modern era, like watching now, um, with all this years of animation history since and stuff like that. It just feels so rote. Like, oh, I've
Mhm.
seen this before. Like, it's just kind of, eh. And I didn't find it that funny. And honestly, it's like I just kind of wish that he'd won because I kind of his house
Yeah.
was better. Like,
Yeah, it's like that was one thing I didn't like about it, was that the fact that at the end the Pink Panther lost, even though like he's really the one we're rooting for in all these Pink Panther shorts. Or it's just yeah, but anyway, I am a fan of Pink Panther as like a character. I love his design. I love the way he moves. I think he's just really well made. But for this short specifically, uh, it's fine. It doesn't do that much too interesting or fun. Like it has some good gags here and there, but it's pretty standard in the terms of like these big guy, little guy shorts. And it's just like, and also the version I watched had a laugh track, which I know is like it was added. Think that was added in to for the when it got brought over to television, and so it's like the original short had no laugh track. Uh, so I really shouldn't be judging it with the laugh track, but still, there was a laugh track, and that was kind of annoying. Uh, but even if it didn't have the laugh track, I think I still would have thought this was just kind of boring. It's just like, and you mentioned that the Panther's house was pretty cool, and I thought it was pretty cool too. It First of all, the pink design is great, and then it's like it's a very mid-century modern design, and I really like that
Mm,
kind of style. Meanwhile, little man just picks a boring ass house. It's just the kind of
yeah.
thing you draw in like when you're 12. Well, just like a triangle roof, square bottom. It's just like bing bam boom. You're done. You got a house. And it's just like come on, just have a bit more originality. And it's just like just and so we are rooting for the Pink Panther to somehow trick little man into building his idea of a house, and then he it doesn't happen. It's just like you're building up to this, and then it doesn't work. It's just like
Yeah, it's a weird dynamic too because watching it, like I'm not as overly familiar, like I'm not as familiar with the Pink Panther characters you probably are. Um, because like you've watched like more of the shorts and all this sort of stuff, and you got a better memory. But it's like watching it, it's like the dynamic that was set up between the Builder guy and the Pink Panther doesn't feel fully realized. Like some aspects of it kind of felt like he was like the Pink Panther was both Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote, and then like in other ways it was like the builder's like Elmer Fudd, and he's like Bugs, the Panther's Bugs Bunny. You know what I mean? Like there's no, but it kind of didn't really like work, especially to like the Panther not winning kind of sort of makes it harder to define what that kind of antagonistic dynamic is between the
mhm,
characters, which made it less like interesting and engaging to
yeah.
me.
And it's just like I really haven't seen that much Pink Panther, but I have seen the previous nominee which won. And it's just like there's interesting comparisons that you can make between the two. For especially since they're both kind of construction themed. Like the last one, they're just like painting a house, and this one they're building one. And so it's just like it's kind of similar dynamics going on, which is probably one reason why this one doesn't work that well or as well, because it's just kind of retreading some similar ground and just not doing it as well. And it's just
Mm.
like, and also in that one, it has a kind of building of the dynamic. Like first off, you have the little man. He doesn't know like the Pink Panther is even there. Like he at first he's just like suddenly sees pink paint there and is like, okay, whatever, paints over it. And then he starts to think that there's a mouse house, but somehow like a very large mouse that is like fucking things up for him. And then eventually he sees the Pink Panther. It's like, oh, you're behind this, and then they try to stop each other. And then eventually Pink Panther wins and paints the whole world pink. Uh, and this one, it's just like there's not that kind of build in it. It's just kind of it feels very kind of static in terms of like what is happening. Like there's some building in terms of like well, first there's building in terms of the house that they're building, but also there's building in terms of the gags. Like it becomes a bit more and more outlandish, but not to like a very comedic extent. It's just like, oh, we gotta do something a tiny bit bigger than this and a bit bigger than that. It's just like it just feels very, very kind of rote. Like they're just kind of going through the motions of these. Like what I what I imagine the real situation is, it's like, okay, the Mirish company has commissioned 20 short films. We gotta make all of these. What are some of the ideas that we can think of for these shorts? It's like, oh, we could have one where we build in a house. It's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll do that. Just put some of these gags in there. It's just like bing bam boom, you're done.
Yeah, like they've got like a formula already. Like they've got like kind of a blueprint. And they're just kind
A
of like,
pink
yeah,
print.
we could just modify this a little bit and then just put out this again and
Mhm.
again. You know what I mean? Like they found something that works and it's like it does its job, but it
Mhm.
doesn't do it amazingly. It's like it's competent. It's like the person who goes in to work and does the bare minimum,
Yeah.
like at your minimum wage shift. Like you just know they're there for a paycheck and that's totally fine, you
Yeah.
know? Like,
Yeah, it's like we get it. It's like we're
yeah.
I'm not mad at you, Holly Pratt, for just being a bit unoriginal here. I'm just like I'm more mad at the Academy for nominating it because
Yeah.
it's like there
There's
must have
could
been
have been
something
better
better.
options. Yeah.
Yeah,
Gotta
although
be
it's
something
like
out there.
so I think I've mentioned this before, but the way that the nomination process works is that so you have the people, the voters or whatever, whoever is the committee for watching the shorts. They have the short list, they watch all the shorts, and then they rate it for either out of either 10, 8, 6, or 4. Like those are the four ratings that they can give it. And then
Can't give it
they
a two?
no 10, 8, 6, or 4.
That's
And then it's
crazy.
just like and then they average all the votes, and then anything that is over 8, that the average is over 8, gets nominated, and up to 5 nominees. But if there isn't even so there has to be at least 3 nominees in the category though. So once we're down to 3 nominees, there's potential that not all 3 of the nominees got that average of 8 rating. And so it's just like maybe this maybe the Pink Blueprint was one that was below the 8.0 average, but still made it in the nominations is just because it was higher than all the other ones. Who knows? It's like I haven't seen the short list, so or I haven't watched the films in the short list, so maybe there isn't actually anything better than what we have here. Who knows? And maybe I'll watch them someday. But yeah,
Man.
the film we got here, it is passable. It is fine. It wasn't a waste of time. It was just a use of it that happened. I watched this film. It exists. That's the best I can say for it.
It really does. It's just there.
Hmm.
Like, also, like, an offshoot, like, that isn't really related to the short, but it's so funny because it's like, like, the Pink Panther films with Steve Martin, I obviously have not watched the show since I was, like, there's movies since I was, like, a child, but it's like watching that short just kind of made me vaguely recall those movies, and I was like, what the fuck did those movies have to do with the Pink Panther?
So
Like, it,
so so the thing is, uh so in the original film, like the 60s film with Peter Sellers, uh the Pink Panther itself, like the titular Pink Panther, is just a diamond, and then like that gets stolen. But for the opening animated sequence that they for some reason had commissioned, they just decided to make a Pink Panther, just that's in the thing, and then it gets chased around by Inspector Clouseau in the animated sequence. Uh, and then it's just like that opening credits sequence with the Pink Panther, it's like that was just so popular that they decided to make a spin-off of the short, make short film spin-offs. And then they also kept doing those opening animated sequences in all the other Pink Panther films. And so by the time the remakes came along, you just have the Pink Panther there as like, it just has to be there. It's just what you do. You put the Pink Panther in the opening credits.
for real? I did not know that at all.
Yeah.
That's so funny because it's like I remember like even thinking as a kid, I was like, why isn't the Pink Panther in the movie?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the Pink Panther was just the name of a diamond that some animators were like, oh, Pink Panther, that's a good idea for a cartoon character. So they put it in the opening credits, and then the guy, he's here now.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I
Oh,
would
I
like
love
to buy a
that.
hamburger. Yeah. I, now that we've gone through those 3 nominees,
Yeah.
let's not acknowledge. Just uh, let's rank them all. Zara, start us off with your number 3.
Um, the the pink blueprint
Yeah,
bureaucratized.
same. Uh, it's fine. It's but the other 2 are just more fun.
It
Uh,
exists.
what's your number 2?
Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brothers double feature thing.
The Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass double feature.
You Fuck! I thought I had it.
No. But yeah, that's also my number 2. It's a lot of
Yeah.
fun. Really love this one, even though a lot of people really hate this. But I think it's great. I think it's fun. But it's simply not as good as The Drag, which we both have as our number 1. We have the exact same rank, which is,
We're literally so in sync right now.
which is easy to do when there's only 3 nominees, but still, it's a good thing. But yeah, The Drag, just really fun, really gorgeous. It's just a really great piece of animation. Thank you again, NFB, for all the great work you do. Ooh, and it's like
Thank you, bestie.
yeah. But
God,
yes,
yeah, it was great.
before we end our show, are there any final thoughts you'd like to share, Zara, or anything you'd like to promote?
Yes, I would like to promote the album Youth is Wasted by Reef Carney. It's on Spotify and Apple Music. You should listen to it.
All right, everyone out there, listen to that album. Oh, well, thank you, Zara, for coming on the show. And thank you, listener, for tuning in. This has been the
Thank you
short
for having me.
this has been the short podcast about short films. Until next time, goodbye.